Tia Mowry stood in front of a crowd that had known her in many versions since she was teenage. Ever since the days when she and her twin sister Tamara were fresh-faced leads of a sitcom that basically shaped an entire generation's viewing habits of young Americans everywhere now. She was not anymore a teenager. She was a woman in her mid-40s who had already lived through far more than the industry that made her famous ever prepared her for. And she was about to get more honest than she had perhaps ever been publicly before. It is a form of malignant breast cancer. Tia Mowry said, her voice steady in the way voices get steady when someone has already cried all the tears available and reached the other side of shock into something quieter and more durable inside her. She added with the same calm composure, I had wonderful doctors. The announcement hit with a weight that all such news always carries, the specific heaviness of someone who has been present in your life, who has been on your screen since you were old enough to recognize faces, whose name and image are woven into the fabric of a particular part of your growing up back then. Tia Mowry was not just a celebrity getting a diagnosis. She was for millions who grew up watching Sister Sister. Someone who felt really familiar. Someone who occupied a place in emotional memory that felt more personal and different than just ordinary fame. She described the diagnosis and treatment that followed as a long, difficult, humbling journey in the precise sense of the word, not humiliating, but something that strips away everything non-essential and leaves you with a clearer understanding of what actually matters in the end for a real life. I'm going to be bald, she said with a candor that was both vulnerable and defiant. It's an experience that has humbled me. The first thing she did, she told the audience, was prepare her wigs. This small practical detail, the decision to manage the most visible side effect of chemotherapy before it arrived to be ready rather than devastated, said everything about who Tia Mowry is. A woman who, across a career that began when she was a child and has unfolded over 3 decades of very public living, has consistently shown the ability to face difficult things directly rather than waiting for them to catch her unprepared. And then she said the thing that transcended the personal and became the universal, the reason she chose to speak publicly at all, to make her private diagnosis available for public discussion when every instinct for self-protection might have argued silence instead here. If you find something small in your breast, she said, addressing not the audience in front of her but every woman watching and listening, don't ignore it. This is Tia Mowry at her most essential, not the sitcom star, not the celebrity brand, not the reality television personality, not any of the other shapes her public life has taken across 30+ years. This is the woman underneath all of those shapes, the woman who grew up in a military family and survived the pressures of child stardom and navigated a public divorce and raised 2 children and dealt with endometriosis for years and built a career on her own terms, who now has cancer and is choosing to use that experience to say something that might save someone else's life. Tia Deshawn Mowry was born on July 6, 1978 in Gelnhausen, West Germany, a fact that surprises people who associate her entirely with American television and the specific cultural landscape of 1990s California. Her father Timothy John Mowry was a United States Army officer and her mother Darlene Renee Flowers had been a security guard and corrections officer before the demands of raising 4 children. Tia, her twin sister Tamara, older brother Taj and younger brother Tavier made her home life the main occupation. The Mowry family moved frequently as military families do following the rhythms of assignment and deployment that govern life in service of the armed forces. Tia and Tamara were raised in a household that was simultaneously strictly structured. The discipline of military family life imposes strict expectations on children that civilian households rarely replicate, and deeply loving, built on a foundation of faith in Christianity that would remain central to both twins throughout their adult lives. The twins were from their earliest years inseparable in the way that identical twins and close families become, not just physically but emotionally, sharing a language of reference and a depth of understanding that can make even the closest non-twin relationships feel slightly thin by comparison. They were also from their earliest years unmistakably talented. They were comfortable in front of people. They had the specific quality that the entertainment industry calls it and that cannot be taught or manufactured, the ability to hold a room's attention by simply being present in it. When the family relocated to California, the twins' mother, recognizing what her daughters had, began taking them to auditions. The entertainment industry had by this point long histories of chewing up child actors and leaving them worse off than it found them, histories that anyone paying attention could have read in the cautionary tales of dozens of former child stars who had navigated the transition from childhood celebrity to adult irrelevance with varying degrees of personal wreckage. Darlene Mowry was paying attention. She protected her daughters with the ferocity that the best stage mothers deploy before the term stage mother became pejorative. The auditions began producing results. Tia and Tamara appeared in commercials and small television roles in the kind of background work that builds a resume without yet constituting a career. And then in 1994, when Tia was 15 years old, everything changed. Sister Sister arrived in 1994 as an ABC sitcom built around a premise that was in retrospect both simple and quietly radical: twin sisters separated at birth, adopted by different families, who are reunited as teenagers when their adoptive parents meet by chance. The show starred Tia Mowry as Tia Landry, the studious, ambitious, book-smart twin from Detroit, and Tamara Mowry as Tamara Campbell, the more extroverted, fashion-conscious twin from suburban Chicago. The show was never treated like prestige television. It was a classic family sitcom built strictly on genre rules: the laugh track, the predictable weekly misunderstanding that gets cleaned up in 20 minutes, the supporting cast designed to bounce jokes off the main story. But what turned it into something bigger was not the writing or production polish, it was the performances at the center: two young women who had an almost unnatural chemistry and an instantly believable charm that made their relationship feel real from the very first scene. Tia Mowry and Tamara were not actors randomly cast as twins. They were twins playing twins, and that difference changed everything. The shorthand between them, the way they finished each other's sentences, the effortless way they moved around each other, and the humor that seemed to exist without effort because they had spent their entire lives reading each other, could not be recreated by any two unrelated performers, no matter how talented. That authenticity carried straight onto the screen and made the entire show feel alive. It convinced millions of young viewers that what they were watching was not just entertainment, but something that reflected them, something that belonged to them. Sister Sister ran for 6 seasons, first on ABC and later on the WB, producing 119 episodes between 1994 and 1999. It built a loyal audience that was mostly young, female, and predominantly black, a group the television industry of that era rarely served with consistency or care, yet Sister Sister delivered both warmth and reliability. Its real achievement was not just popularity, but positioning. It was a black family sitcom that didn't center its entire identity around race as a message. Instead, it simply focused on characters, relationships, and everyday situations where race existed naturally rather than as a forced theme. In the mid-1990s television landscape, that was not a small detail, it was a quiet breakthrough. For Tia Mowry personally, the show was more than a career launch. It gave her structure at a time when child actors are usually left to figure things out alone. A stable set, consistent creative direction, and the discipline of actually working day after day shaped her adolescence in a way most young performers never experience. And then there was the most important factor of all, her sister. While many young actors struggle with isolation and identity loss, the twins move through it together, sharing the same environment, the same expectations, and the same growing pains in real time. That support system mattered even more when life outside the show brought other challenges. Before her later breast cancer diagnosis, Tia had already been dealing with another long-term health condition that shaped her daily life in a very different but equally serious way. Endometriosis is a chronic condition where tissue similar to the uterine lining grows outside the uterus, often causing severe pain and long-term complications. It affects millions of women globally, yet it is still widely underdiagnosed and misunderstood, not because it is rare, but because women's pain has historically been taken less seriously by medical systems. Tia was diagnosed in her early 20s and spoke openly about the intense, ongoing pain it caused her. It wasn't just physical suffering, it affected her energy, her work, and her daily functioning. Despite that, she continued building her career, maintaining her public image, and managing the growing responsibilities of adult life. Her willingness to talk about endometriosis publicly followed the same pattern she would later apply to her cancer diagnosis. Refusing silence when sharing her experience could help others recognize their own symptoms and seek help earlier. In doing so, she turned personal struggle into public awareness, using her platform to challenge the idea that women should quietly endure pain without question. The move from child star to adult actor is notoriously difficult, and the entertainment industry is full of former child performers who never successfully make that transition. Many are unable to escape the identity they built early in life, or find that the industry no longer values them once they are no longer children. Tia Mowry, however, was determined to break that pattern. After Sister Sister ended in 1999, she worked deliberately to rebuild her career. She auditioned, trained, and took on roles that pushed her beyond the sitcom image she was known for, choosing projects that demanded range and discipline rather than relying on nostalgia. That effort led to one of her most significant reinventions in the game, where she played Melanie Barnett from 2006 to 2015. The role allowed her to step into more dramatic storytelling, showing emotional depth and complexity that proved she was far more than her early television persona. Alongside acting, she also expanded into lifestyle and entrepreneurship, launching Tia Mowry at Home, a personal brand focused on cooking, home life, and family-centered content. It reflected a different side of her identity, one built around domestic creativity, motherhood, and everyday living rather than just entertainment fame. She expanded her presence beyond television and film, stepping into writing, hosting, and the growing digital space where celebrities could finally speak directly to their audiences without traditional industry filters. She wrote a cookbook, appeared on her own cooking show, and embraced social media as a way to build a more personal connection with fans who had followed her since childhood. The reality series Tia and Tamera, which aired on the Style Network from 2011 to 2013, offered viewers a more intimate look into the twins' adult lives. It showed Tia Mowry navigating marriage and motherhood, while Tamera Mowry went through engagement and her own life transitions. At its best, the show captured the evolving bond between adult sisters living under constant public attention, balancing private emotions with public visibility. Looking back, the series also subtly reflected tensions that were not always spoken out loud. What appeared on camera as a stable and happy marriage was, over time, facing challenges that were only partially visible to the outside world. Tia Mowry married actor Corey Hardrict on April 20, 2008, after a long relationship that developed before their major fame peaks. Together, they built a family, welcoming 2 children, Cree Taylor Hardrict in 2011 and Cairo Tiana Hardrict in 2018. 4 years, their relationship was publicly seen as one of Hollywood's more stable partnerships, built on shared growth, early struggles, and years of working through life side by side. She often spoke warmly about her marriage, presenting an image of gratitude, stability, and fulfillment. From the outside, it looked like a story of 2 people growing together and building a life that balanced career, family, and creativity. But in October 2022, after 14 years of marriage, she filed for divorce. The announcement was short and carefully framed, offering respect and closure without revealing the deeper reasons behind the separation. Still, for many fans who had followed her life closely, the news came as a shock, breaking the image of long-standing stability they thought they understood. Tia Mowry later spoke more openly about the emotional weight of the breakup, describing it not as a simple legal ending, but as the loss of years of shared memories, routines, struggles, and emotional investment. She acknowledged the pain without turning it into public conflict, choosing not to assign blame or turn the situation into drama. Instead, she processed it privately, leaning on her family, her faith, and her support system. Over time, she continued to show up publicly in a steady way, focused on her children, her work, and rebuilding emotional balance after a major life shift. Around the same broader period of her mid-40s, she also faced another serious health challenge. The exact timing of her breast cancer diagnosis was not fully disclosed, but it overlapped with a phase of intense personal transition. What she did share was the reality of the experience itself and how it reshaped her understanding of health, fear, and awareness. Breast cancer is one of the most common cancers affecting women globally, and early detection is critical for successful treatment. Many cases become more dangerous not because of lack of treatment options, but because symptoms are ignored or discovered too late due to fear, delay, or lack of awareness. Tia Mowry described her diagnosis as a form of malignant breast cancer and chose not to publicly share every medical detail, which remains a personal medical right. What she did share was the emotional reality, the moment of diagnosis, the conversations with doctors, and the beginning of treatment planning. Her treatment included chemotherapy, which came with visible side effects such as hair loss. Anticipating this, she prepared in advance by arranging wigs, choosing to face the physical changes with readiness instead of shock. That small decision reflected a larger pattern in her life, confronting difficult realities directly rather than avoiding them. One of the most powerful parts of her message was not about herself, but about others. Speaking directly to women, she urged them to pay attention to their bodies and not ignore early warning signs. Her message carried urgency because it came from lived experience, not abstract awareness. Tia Mowry emphasized that early attention to small symptoms can make a life-saving difference, since early-stage detection often leads to far more effective treatment outcomes. Her words were not framed as publicity, but as lived warning, meant to prevent others from delaying action the way many people do out of fear or denial. Across her career, she has consistently used her platform not just for entertainment, but for communication about real-life issues affecting women. From health struggles like endometriosis to her later cancer journey, her openness reflects a pattern of turning private pain into public awareness when it can help others make better decisions. Throughout this period, her foundation remained her family, her faith, and the bond with her sister Tamara Mowry, which has been one of the most constant relationships in her life since childhood. That support system, combined with her focus on her children, became central to how she navigated both emotional and physical challenges. Her overall journey reflects not just fame, but endurance through multiple layers of public and private struggle, career pressure, marriage breakdown, health battles, and the constant expectation of living life in the public eye.